why we are now awake and why we experience suffering in our life, why life is so difficult. To a certain extent, the short answer could be we are the problem. It's very hard to digest this answer, but if you're interested into this topic, I invite you to watch this video that could provide you a different perspective of the whole problem, so to speak. The reason why we are now enlightened, so to speak, it is something that was asked to the Buddha itself. And the answer of the Buddha was very simple. He said basically that ignorance, our state of confusion, suffering, and limited life experience is present from a time without beginning. And at the same time, the possibility of recognizing our true nature was also present, and it is present from a time from the beginning, which is for sure an encouraging thing, because it means that we have the possibility of living this limited conditioned experience of life, and we can find freedom even now within this life. We believe that we suffer because of external circumstances. We believe that life is unfair with us, that things don't go the way we want, and most of the suffering created by these conditions in reality is not in those things themselves, but it's rather in the perception that we had from them. Sometimes expectations, our personal ideas, our filter through which we look at life is distorted, and we can call that ignorance. Ignorance about our real nature. We think to be a separate human being. We think to have an individual brain. To some extent we do. We think that we are confined within the body. We think that we are just a bunch of bones and flesh and matter, when in reality, for instance, with practices such as Gong, we can start to challenge experientially those limiting conditions, because we realize actually that we can even unify ourselves energetically with the field outside of us. And this of course has great implication also in the way that we perceive life. Unfortunately, we try to solve the problems in our life by trying to find solutions. And these problems, most of the time, they are created, as I said, by the filter, by the thoughts, ideas, expectations that we have in our mind. And at the same time, within that realm of problems and expectation and ideas, there is a new idea coming up which invites us to go and find some kind of solution to get rid of them. The very problem could be described in a very simple way, although it could not provide a long-lasting solution, because this is something that we have to find for ourselves. If the problem began with our mind, with our ideas, thoughts, expectation, perception of life, how could it be solved by another idea? How could it be solved by finding a tool to improving this psychological condition? Well, to a certain extent, there is a paradox, especially in the Buddhist tradition, which is something that I explored a little bit, which says that it is inevitable, actually, the existence of a paradox, or of the fact, I'm referring to the fact that an explanation of the problem of the mind could actually lead us to go into a deeper level of ourselves. In fact, intellectually we can discuss all the problems, all the limitations, everything that we are not, to eventually come to an unspeakable truth, which is related to the nature, deeper nature, essential nature of ourselves. In the Buddhist tradition, one explanation that I could give, for instance, is that we are like an empty space in our nature. Could be similar to a very empty space, like the sky. Many times we find this analogy of the sky with the clouds. And in this sky, clean and without time, infinite, some clouds appear, some perceptions appear, whether we're talking about internal thoughts or external perceptions, or both of them, they appear into this empty sky. And for some reasons, this empty sky gets confused and identifies itself with a particular perception, let's say with a thought. And from that stage, there is the idea of somebody thinking that thought, which makes the problem is even bigger. Because it's normal that we have thoughts because we are alive, but it's not normal that we believe that we make those thoughts, because the thoughts rather they appear naturally in our perception, and then we buy one thought rather than the other, following it and building all the narrative connected to it. But in reality, if we wouldn't follow a thought, they would simply disappear. And this is something that in the Buddhist tradition is connected to the notion of emptiness. The fact that our nature, simple nature, is like the empty sky, where things appear, and if we don't follow them, everything subsides and go back into space. So the nature of the mind, the nature of ourself is similar to space, to a certain degrees, let's say, as a metaphor. The problem becomes when we start to identify ourselves with one thought, and so we close this infinite space into a box, into a container that we can say it the body-mind container. So our mind and our body, the identification with the mind and with the body. While if we will stay present, just vigilant, without identifying ourselves with anything in particular, this container wouldn't be present. Unfortunately, it's very difficult because we live in society with family and friends, and everybody relates us as human beings individually, which is true on one extent, but is not completely true on a greater understanding. So from this identification with the thoughts, we have emotions. So the thoughts, they produce certain emotions. And emotions, they can be a bit more difficult to identify sometimes. We might not even understand that we are a bit grumpy, or we have some kind of bad emotions inside. Like the thoughts, sometimes we don't even realize that we are thinking, while in reality there is lots of noise in our mind. So this empty space identifies itself with the thoughts, with the mind, and it becomes the body-mind container, which later on produce also, well, even immediately, certain emotions connected to our interpretation of life and things. If we like certain things, we run after them. If we don't like them, we develop feeling of disliking those things, certain emotions connected to them. And eventually from mind, emotions, from empty space, mind, thoughts, emotions, below we have actions. We act in the world. And this is the way that we operate unconsciously. Now, to a certain extent, it's very important to pay attention to our action very much, for a very simple reason. We can really screw up our life if our actions are driven, as I said, by certain thoughts that create a certain emotion, let's say bad emotion. We do bad action, it's very simple to understand how we can create suffering for ourselves and others in life. Let's say that I have a competitive thought about my colleague, and I develop a sense of jealousy, an emotion of jealousy, and I act and try to do something to sabotage that person. We can understand how bad that behavior can be and how bad the results can be in our life. That's why it's very important that we look after emotions at the beginning, after actions at the beginning, because actions are the most simple things that we can really look at, and they are easier to be recognized. In fact, we can talk about big things, big mysteries, big nature of mind, and all this kind of concept, but always we have to pay attention to our actions, because our actions, they define our happiness, our quality of life. Because if we act badly, something badly is going to come back. As simple as that. If I do something bad to one person, that person is going to do something bad to me. So it's very important that although we might be to a certain degree aware of these processes and also about the empty nature of our mind, we always pay attention to the behavior, to the right behavior that we have, because don't do to others what you don't want that others will do to you. Very simple concept that you find even in Christianity, in religion, philosophies, but actually they are very true because they contain a very the very essence of good quality of life here on this existence called life. That's why we have to pay attention to our action. It doesn't matter if we are more or less identified with the mind, with the thoughts, and we can recognize even our bigger and deeper existence, and like the infinite sky, as I said before. It is always good to pay attention to how we behave so that we don't screw ourselves up. And also by paying attention to how we behave, to the emotion associated to it, to the mind, so the thoughts and everything that is happening that is driving that the intention behind our action in the world, we can truly align ourselves and be integrated full human being. Because if we think about something, but then we feel something else, and then we act in a different way in the world just to have a particular compromise to gain something and not lose something, that create an inner world, that create we go out of alignment. Of course, we create a war inside. I will try to go deeper and deeper with these kind of topics and teachings that I received. They are not mine. I'm just trying to pass them on with the hope that they can be useful to many other people to improve the way we live. If you like them, comment below, let me know what you think, and I will try to post more and more this kind of content with the hope that we can improve our human perception and our human life on this planet.